Welcome to my podcast. Today I'm going to talk about another topic. It's about the life test in the UK, which is one of the tests required for any adult for acquiring the citizenship. So basically, I studied for this exam and I passed it first attempt, alhamdulillah. So it's basically for permanent resident or citizen of the UK. It's about ethic laws, country make up the UK, events that people formed the UK history, what's kind of a life in the UK, how the UK is governed, and how to integrate in the British community. So basically, there is 24 questions. 4 is basically MCQs, and 2 answer choice. So basically, you need to attain at least like 18 out of 24 in order for you to pass the exam. So you need to book the exam online through the government site, and the exam is basically on the computer. My mouse was really bad, but I managed to go through the questions. The exam costs around £50 and it's 45 minutes to answer all the questions. So basically you have enough time to review if you were studying and understood the basic principle of the whole era of the UK in the old time. And there's many approved centers whereby you can take the exam in the city where you live or reside. So, and the exam is not like in certain other medical examination whereby if you failed many times, you can't proceed. You can take it as long as you can until you pass and try to make like 7 days period in order to book and revise again. They usually require the ID, so it's basically your biometric or passport, driving license not accepted. And once you pass it, you will, of course, complete the whole procedure about applying and auditing and this kind of stuff. So, in order to go for the history of the UK, I try to explain it and simplify it. So there is 3 or 4 ages in the old time in the UK. So the first one was the Stone Age, and then there is followed by the Iron Age, and then followed by the Bronze Age, and then the Middle Age. So each era have a different things that peculiar for that area. For instance, the Stone Age people were recognized for their metal worker, and there is 2 prehistorical areas in that area. There are 2, so basically you need to remember them because they are very important in the history. So one is called Stone Age, which is in Wiltshire. It's in the southwest of the UK, and it's basically now used for celebration. And the other one is Sacra Bra. It's in Scotland in a place called Orkney. The Iron Age is specified or peculiar or characterized by the coin minting, and then there is this one, Bronze Age, which is also characterized by ornament, metal worker, and the Middle Age, which happened by the normal conquest, and it has also a specific criteria that I will pass through. In that regard, also you need to know certain ages in this country. So because, like for instance, the right to vote, how it evolved across the time. So it was before for men only and for certain age, and then it has changed across the years by a lady from Manchester. She has a peculiar name that you need to remember as well, which is part of the history, who fought for the right of women to vote as well, equivalent to men. And there are certain laws that you need also to remember, like Bill of Rights, which is Parliament increased power. There is certain in the history, like certain names which is attached to certain occasions, like Bildes, which is when the bombing happened in the UK by the German Adolf Hitler. And there is the defeat date, when there is a forced landing or an army and attacking Hitler force. And there is another occasion or event when France fell, was called Dunkirk, and where like 30,000 people were evacuated from the beach through the navy. It was a big or huge naval operation. And so that's basically in regard. Also, there is the idea of the Union flag, what's called Union Jack, which is three crosses represent basically Scotland, Ireland, and England, but Wales is not included because it was united at that time. However, there is certain attached date for each occasion, like for instance, March, 1st of March of 17, which is St. Patrick and St. David. So basically David in Wales and Patrick in Ireland, and that's on 17th of March. So I had that question. Also St. George, it's in England, and it happened in April 23rd, and St. Andrew, it's in Scotland, in November the 30th. So that's basically about this flag and those specific dates. And there is also certain castle which has been built in the Middle Age, like for instance Edinburgh Castle, Canterbury Cathedral. And there is also certain times when there is war, which is like First World War and the Second World War. You need to remember dates, how long it lasted, and what happened after then. And there's a civil war in the UK, which happened in 1642. It's another important date to remember. Also, you need to remember those, for instance, stages of early Britain. So, for instance, the language, how it evolved, why it's multiple accent, and why it differs from one place to another. So it's related to, Saxo-Angelian and this one Norman as well. And like I say, the first tribe which invaded England was Roman, which lived by 410 and never came back to the UK. They were mostly from North Europe, from the Jutes, Angles, Saxons. The three specific ages, as I mentioned, the Stone Age, which happened 6,000 years ago, and whereby it's characterized by the farmer who arrived from the Southeast Europe and called stone because they used mostly stone to make their houses, tools, monument, and the specific criteria about Stone Age. As I said, the two prehistorical area, which is Stonehenge and Sakrabara. And then it's followed by the Bronze Age, which is 40,000 years ago, and they used gold, bronze, their tools, weapons. So basically the name will specify what was used in that area, and they basically lived in a round house, sit in a village, buried their dead body in the round barrow, and then followed by the Iron Age, which specified by replacing basically the iron to use their tool and weapon. And people were gathering in large settlement, and mostly they were farmer, craft worker, warrior, and in the Dorset they made something called Helford in a Median castle, and the language used at that time called Gaelic and Celtic, and is characterized by the first coin which minted in the UK, and early on, when it was invaded by the Roman, it was by Emperor Jesus. And his name, I think, is Emperor Claudius Jesus, which is in the 43 before the century. So that's an area you need to remember. Middle Age characterized by a lot of things that you need to remember as well. It's called medieval, and it was Indo-Roman, 476. After the Norman conquest, it was specified by constant war, and it was annexed to Wales to England. However, Scotland remained an independent, and Ireland accepted the UK authority. So that's the main specification about the Middle Age. And the religion at the time to protect the Holy Land and by the Crusade. And then there is other era happened, like for instance Black Death, which killed 1/3 of the population. Before then, there is a system of ownership, which is by the Norman. It's called feudalism. It's important to remember this term as well because you can find it in certain questions. And in Scotland, the high-rank people, they're called clans, which give a small part of their land honor. And it was an area after then where a new middle class emerged, and it was basically the start point for the Parliament institution to develop an abolition of slavery. So 2 million Indian and Chinese came an immigrant to the UK. The most specific area at that time, they wanted, the UK suffered a lot, so they were like looking for a lot of migrants, especially for bus driver, which came from India. There is certain also times whereby each ruled the country, so that's another thing you need to remember and study them as well. There is certain kings as well. They are confusing a little bit, but if you try to divide them and how it evolved and happened, so you could try to memorize them, especially for the exam, because sometimes they ask about certain years, certain dates. I got like 3 questions in regards. So you need to remember them in order to get a good score. What else shall I state? As I say, the area of, ruling, you need to study them. I'll try to pass through them because it took me some time to put them in order. So it started with King Henry the Eighth, who was born in 1509 until 1547. So he's very famous because he married 6 wives, and the first wife was Catherine Por of Aragon. She's Spanish. She gave him Mary. The first was called the Bloody Mary. So Mary had a long history. She ruled Scotland, and she was imprisoned for 20 years, and she was a Catholic, and she was executing any protest, which is against Protestant, which is against, opposite to the religion that she took. The second wife was Anne Boleyn, who gave him Elizabeth I, which has history, also in the UK, as when she regained the power. There is Catherine Howard and Annie Cleve, which is German. He just married her for a political reason. And the last one is John Seymour, who gave him the son that he was after, Edward, who died when he was 15 years old and only ruled for 6 years. And he was strong Protestant. And then his half-sister, which is Mary, which was from the first wife, became the queen, and she was Catholic, and she executed any Protestant. And once she passed away, her half-sister Elizabeth I became the queen, and she who were defeating Spanish Armada, which is a huge fleet of ships to bring Catholicism to the country. And in her era, the UK flourished, so she colonized the USA and promoted patriotism. And the poetry and drama has been flourished as well. There is another stories about the Queen Victoria, who abolished a number of taxes for the imported good to promote free trading in the UK at her time. And there's also certain poets and musicians who wrote poetry, novels, also sports, who's famous in sport. So all of that you need also to try to memorize them. They're quite tricky names, so you need to find ways how to can remember them, as I did myself. So it's according to your power to retain some knowledge, and of course when you keep reading you will memorize by time. Also about the parliament and DV dissolved this one, which is centralized and which can be done in different places like Scotland, Wales, Ireland for their governance, and which is centralized through the whole UK. You need to know them as well, as they come in the questions as well. And there is another war happened in the UK called War of Roses, which is a civil war in 1455 to determine the next king of the UK or England at the time. So it was between Lancaster and York, and each they have their own roses. So Lancaster they have red rose, and York have white rose. And then when they ended the war, they come up to a white rose inside a red rose as something to distinguish them. Another thing that I want to talk about, the House of Common and Lord in Scotland is quite different. It's called Common Lord's Clergy, but in the UK or England, it's the first two names. Legal system, and if there is any issue with legality, it's different across England and Scotland, so you need to study that as well. There's some quite few scientists that you need to remember them, their name and what's their invention, so that's important thing also. And there's quite few battles as well, like Battle of Hastic, which is now can be commemorated in something called Banex Tapestry, which found in France. It's quite long. It's 230 feet, which is equivalent to 70 meter long. So just memorize about the war at the time. And there's another book which is called The Mystery, which shows the UK society and the normal era. So it's another thing that you need to study. You need to know about something called Viking, which comes from Denmark and Norway. And when they settled in the UK, they settled in the east, which is Scunthorpe and Grimsby. And also in the Norman area, when it was led by King Edward, there is something called Statue of Rudhan, which annexed to Wales to crown England. And they have basically two huge castles, which is Conway and Caernarvon belts. So all of that you need to memorize because they are part of the history and you can't avoid them. Another thing that I would like to mention, because I made my own notes for this, just to simplify it for you. So in the Middle Age, when it was flourishing at a certain time, so there were like people came from different places to be like making this specific area. For instance, from Italy, they were making glass. In Holland, they were making canals. So I had a question about the canals and why they were built in the UK. Also, the waver came from France, and engineering came from Germany. And also, it's a very important question that will ask you, England is composed of what? So you say it's Scotland, Wales, England, and not basically, and North Ireland, but you can't include it as one of those three, yeah? And the UK has been characterized by animation, special effects, so they are well known in that regard. And there's another question I had, which is linked to the UK and can be crown dependency, like Channel Island and Island of Man. However, San Helena and Falkland Island, they are British overseas, but not linked to the UK. You need to know each parliament name and whereabouts. So there are four. You need to remember them, like Senate in Wales, Stormont in Ireland, Westminster in England, and in Scotland it's Highland. And there is specific also dates that you need to remember about, like Eid al-Adha and Al-Fitr and Hanukkah and Festive of Light, which is called Dalawi, and Sikh festive as well. So this is another important thing that you remember. Each have a different duration of time. You need to remember that the principal ethic of the UK is democracy, rule of law, liberty, tolerance tolerant, and of other belief and religion, and how people behave in the British community. And remember, there is no place for extremism or intolerance. And you need to know that Christian constitute around 60%, Muslim 4.4, no religion 25, Hindu 1.5, Jews and Buddhist 0.5, and Sikh is 0.8. England constitute about 84% of the whole population, Scotland 8%, Wales 5%, Ireland 3 or less than, and the people who had some English who was being born or pals, so it's 10%. So that's in short. And there is another very important question, which is responsibility as a British citizen, respect for law, respect others and freedom of opinion, behave equally with others, take care of yourself and your environment. The privilege to be British, freedom of belief, religion, speech, prejudice, fair trial, voting right. As I say, there is. I'm just trying to simplify stuff, but you need to read about the whole thing in order for you to understand and remember, because certain things are gonna take time for you to get them. It's not straightforward if you don't know about history, of course. There is also an icon of Queen of Ainsy, which she had fought against Roman. So there's a statue in the Westminster Bridge in London. And there is two Scotch castle, well known, which is Great and in Venery. So that's something you need to remember as well. And for the porting, there's another thing that you need to remember. It's for the youth one, it's always 10 to 17, so if it's 18, it's different. So in England and Wales and North Ireland, they are specially trained magistrate or district judge. For the youth court, most major cases seen by the Crown Court. In Scotland, it's something called Children Hearing System. In North Ireland, it's youth conferencing. Ireland became independent to two countries in the 1922. You need to remember something called Emancipation, which is abolishment for slavery, and Enlightenment and Reform, which is the right to vote. And you need to remember that the religion which following in the UK is Church of England, which Anglican, and the equivalent to that is Episcopal Church in Scotland and the USA. You need to know that the Home Secretary is in charge of crime, policy, immigration, and the foreigner is for foreign connection with other world. For the criminal law, it's different from England and Scotland as well. So if it's minor cases, it's in the magistrate. In Scotland, it's a justice of the peace court. Serious offense is by the Crown Court. In Scotland is by the Sheriff Court. And the most serious one by the High Court. And you need to remember about Shakespeare and what's his well-known poem. Say, for instance, my question was about Midsummer Night Dream, but it could be Hamlet or Macbeth. So this is one of his famous play. So that's in short. I just try to bring some points that I could help with. Also, there is the nurse Night Tingana. She's British, but she was born, I think, in France, and she made history in the nursing system. So you need to remember that as well. So that's just in short. I'm just trying to, because I just had my exam fresh, so I'm just trying to help with the questions that I have and I still remember, in order just to give you overview about life test in the UK and what you need to prepare for and read from. There is a link in the internet that you can do the exams live, so that one I was really studying from, so it's very straightforward. Just you need to devote time to read about its chapters and then go through the questions, and then you'll be fine and you'll be good to go. So it's called Life in the UK testweb.co.uk. So it gives you different chapters about different history and about different era, different tribe, different wars, what's characterized that period of time, about political and legal changes that happened in the UK, different religious conflict as well, and how monarchy evolved and developed, and the prime minister thing as it happened and how it evolved as well, and in regard to laws as well, how it evolved as well, and different names that you try to remember because they are important in the history of the UK. And basically there is a lot of names. However, they are quite like the lady who voted for the right of the woman. She had a group called Suffragette, and her name is Emmeline Pankhurst. She's born in Manchester in 1858 until 1928. So she's been known for that. There is another poet who's Indian by origin, but he lived in the UK. She had a different poem and different quotes. They are very important as well to remember. And what triggered the World War One, and what happened in between, that the World War II, and prime ministers, different ones who made history to the UK, who's well known till now, who they hated. So there's different ones. You need to remember them, and what happened in the Middle Age, migration post-war, social changes happened in 1960, and what was characterized at that period of time. And there's, as I say, different names evolved in the UK, whether scientifically, whether as a poet, as a musician, as a novelist. All of that, and the government has been involved as well. All of that you need to remember. Different conflicts, and then the Brexit, which happened by the end of 2020, December 31st. And then there's a certain question about the currency, different city in the UK, language, population. The population, I find it very tricky because they're going to ask you about different time in the UK, what percent of the population was that at the time, what's custom and religion, festival, different area, they have different names also. About bank holiday, had bank holiday question, British sport, men and women. So I had that question as well. So I need to remember those because there are some which is very important to remember, like para-Olympic, golf stuff. So different playing has been involved in the UK, and horse racing as well, water sport, motorsport, skiing, musician, art, all of that you need to remember, try to remember. So I had, I think, one of the question about Edward Elgar. So he was well known for his, I think they asked me whether he was musician or a poet. I wasn't very sure, to be honest, but yes, some questions are really tricky because you need to remember names, so it's really hard sometimes, but just try to attach it to something in order to remember. As I say, different festival, and different also architecture. It's very important. They're going to ask you who has been inspired by nature, by the building, by the country, like Scotland. So there's Scottish architect like Robert Adams who influenced the architecture in the UK. So there's different names you need to remember as well: fashion, literature, poet, different thingy. And also, yeah, the gardening is very important in the UK. There is different roses attached to different places, like England is rose, thistle in Scotland, daffodil, Wales, Sarmok, North Ireland. They're going to ask you about traditional food of each part, like Scotland, England, Wales, North Ireland. You need to revise them. They're not very hard. You can remember them. They're not very difficult to remember. Television, radio. I had a question about how it. I mean, when they promoting for the parliament, which way they need to use extensively. Also, question about betting, gambling, pets, places of interest, landmark for the UK. Also, governmental law. This is very important, as I mentioned. So there is different thing constitutional. There's 2 times where the constitutional did not win both parties. So when it was 2010 and when it was in the old time, I think probably 74. So I need all of that to remember. National anthem as well. So there's a lot of things to remember. They're not very hard, but it's worth to study if you want to pass your test. And yeah. Have some knowledge about the UK system and how it involves the media. Very important. The media you need to remember as well. Electoral register, how frequent they vote, who stand in the office, what's the difference between prime minister and member of parliament. Yeah, so there is a lot of things we just need to go through, and yeah, you'll be fine by then. So that's a briefing about this test, and yeah, just study for it and be prepared. Thank you.